Commander Zethka stood on the bridge of the Dominion flagship Eternal Conquest, watching the blue marble of Earth slowly rotate beneath them. The planet looked so peaceful from this distance, so vulnerable. It was hard to believe that this small world had caused the Galactic Dominion so much trouble over the past decade. Status report. Zethka commanded, his four arms folded behind his back in the traditional Vorthak military stance. All fleets are in position, Commander, reported his tactical officer, a nervous Scolari whose scales shifted from blue to pale green with anxiety. 3,000 ships arranged in a perfect siege formation. The humans cannot possibly escape. Zethka nodded, satisfied. The Galactic Dominion had ruled over 47 star systems for nearly 2 centuries. They had conquered the peaceful Alterans, enslaved the technological Kreks, and absorbed dozens of other species into their empire. Each conquest had followed the same pattern: overwhelming force, swift surrender, integration into the Dominion hierarchy. It was a formula that had never failed, until they met the humans. The first contact with Earth had occurred 10 years ago when a Dominion scouting fleet discovered the Sol system during routine expansion operations. The humans had been barely spacefaring, with only a few primitive colonies on their moon and the nearby red planet they called Mars. By all standard calculations, they should have surrendered within days of the Dominion's arrival. Instead, they had done something unprecedented. They had said no, not just a diplomatic no, or a request for negotiation. They had looked at the vast armada of alien ships, listened to the surrender demands, and responded with what their leaders called humanity's official position. That position could be summed up in 2 words that had since become infamous throughout Dominion space: get lost. What followed was the longest, most costly military campaign in Dominion history. The humans fought with a ferocity that shocked even the battle-hardened Vorthak military commanders. They turned their civilian ships into weapons, their colonies into fortresses, and their very bodies into instruments of war. When the Dominion captured human positions, they found that the defenders had often fought to the last person, sometimes triggering devastating explosions rather than allow their technology to fall into enemy hands. But it was not just their willingness to fight that made the humans dangerous. It was how quickly they learned and adapted. Within months of first contact, human scientists had reverse-engineered Dominion technology and begun producing their own versions. Their ships grew larger and more powerful with each engagement. Their weapons became more sophisticated, their tactics more cunning. Most disturbing of all was their apparent inability to recognize when they were beaten. The Dominion had destroyed entire human fleets, conquered major colonies, and inflicted casualties that would have broken any other species will to resist. Yet somehow, the humans always came back stronger than before. "Sir," the communications officer interrupted Zethka's thoughts. "We're receiving a transmission from Earth. It appears to be from their planetary government." "Put it through," Zethka ordered. Perhaps the humans had finally come to their senses. The sight of 3,000 Dominion warships should be enough to convince even these stubborn creatures that further resistance was pointless. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a human female seated behind what appeared to be a simple wooden desk. She wore the blue and white clothing that humans associated with their United Nations organization. Her hair was gray with age, but her eyes held a fierce intelligence that made Zethka slightly uncomfortable. "I am Secretary General Chun Lu of the United Earth Government," the woman said in perfect galactic standard. "I assume you're the commanding officer of the fleet currently threatening our world." "I am Commander Zethka of the Galactic Dominion," he replied, activating the translation matrix. "And this is not a threat, Secretary General. This is an ultimatum. Your species has resisted Dominion authority for 10 years. That resistance ends today." Secretary General Chun smiled, and something in that expression sent a chill down Zethka's spine. "Commander, I have called this meeting to deliver a message from the people of Earth. We have tried to communicate through diplomatic channels for a decade, but you seem to have difficulty understanding plain language. So let me make this as clear as possible." She leaned forward slightly, her hands clasped on the desk before her. "Leave our system immediately, or we will make you leave." Zethka felt his blood pressure spike. The audacity of this creature was beyond belief. "You seem to misunderstand your situation, human. You have perhaps 50 ships left in your entire fleet. We have 3,000. Your colonies are in ruins. Your military is broken. What exactly do you think you can do against the might of the Dominion? That's where you're wrong, Commander, Secretary General Chun replied calmly. Our military isn't broken. It's evolved. You see, humans have a saying, necessity is the mother of invention. 10 years of war with a technologically superior enemy has been quite educational for us. She gestured to something off-screen, and the view pulled back to reveal that she was sitting in what appeared to be a massive underground facility. Banks of monitors showed tactical displays, engineering schematics, and star charts that Zethka didn't recognize. While you've been focused on our military fleets, our scientists have been busy. We've learned a great deal about Dominion technology over the past decade. Your ships, your weapons, your communication systems. We've also learned about your society, your politics, and your military doctrine. Zethka leaned forward, his four hands gripping the command rail. What are you implying, human? I'm not implying anything, Commander. I'm telling you directly. We know about your supply lines stretching back to Dominion space. We know about the political pressure you're under to end this minor colonial war quickly. We know about the other species in your empire who have been watching this conflict very carefully, wondering if they too might be able to resist Dominion rule. The Secretary General's smile widened. Most importantly, we know that your empire's strength is largely an illusion built on the assumption that resistance is futile. Well, Commander, we're about to prove that assumption wrong. Before Zethka could respond, alarms began sounding throughout his ship. The tactical officer's scales had gone completely white with shock. Sir, multiple contacts appearing throughout the system. I'm reading, this can't be right. Report. Zethka Barked. Over 10,000 ships, sir. They're appearing everywhere, behind our flanks, above and below our formation, even between our own vessels. Some of them are broadcasting human signatures, but others... The officer's voice trailed off in disbelief. Others what? Others are showing altering configurations, sir, and Krex designs, and species signatures I don't even recognize. On the main screen, Secretary General Chun was now standing. Behind her, Zethka could see figures that were definitely not human. Tall, graceful beings that could only be Alterans stood beside the distinctive metallic forms of Krex artificial intelligences. There were others as well, species that Zethka recognized from classified Dominion files as long extinct or too primitive to pose any threat. You see, Commander, the Secretary General continued, humans aren't the only species that doesn't like being conquered. Over the past 10 years, while you've been trying to crush our resistance, we've been making friends, establishing contact with other species under Dominion rule, sharing technology, building alliances. She gestured again, and the camera view expanded to show the true scope of the facility. It stretched for kilometers in every direction, filled with beings from dozens of different worlds working side by side with humans. Massive construction bays held ships of hybrid design, vessels that combined human ingenuity with alien technology in ways that shouldn't have been possible. The Alterans, as it turns out, never stopped building ships after their surrender. They just got very good at hiding them. The Krex have been developing new artificial intelligence systems in secret for decades. The Molari have been perfecting stealth technology. The hegemony races have been working on weapons you've never seen before. Zethka felt the deck plates vibrate beneath his feet as his flagship's defensive systems powered up automatically. Around him, his bridge crew worked frantically to assess the tactical situation. The numbers were impossible. Somehow, without the Dominion's knowledge, an alliance of supposedly conquered species had built a fleet that dwarfed even the massive armada he had brought to Earth. This is impossible, he whispered, then louder. This is impossible. The Dominion maintained surveillance over all conquered worlds. Our intelligence networks would have detected such a massive buildup of ships and weapons. Would they? Secretary General Chen asked. Your intelligence networks are very good at detecting traditional military buildup. Shipyards, weapons factories, training facilities. But what if the shipyards were mobile? What if the factories were hidden in asteroid belts and gas giant atmospheres? What if the training was done in virtual reality systems that looked like entertainment networks? She paused, letting the implications sink in. Humans excel at thinking outside the box, Commander. It's one of our most annoying traits. When you can't fight an enemy conventionally, you find unconventional ways to fight them. When you can't build military assets openly, you find creative ways to hide them. When you can't resist alone, you find others who share your cause. The tactical display showed the impossible fleet arrangement around Earth. Human ships had appeared in perfect attack formation, but they weren't alone. Sleek all-terrain vessels moved with their characteristic graceful precision. Massive Krex dreadnoughts appeared like ghosts materializing from hyperspace. Ships of designs that the Dominion had never seen before took positions with military precision that spoke of long planning and careful coordination. "You have one chance, Commander Zethka," the Secretary-General said, her voice taking on a harder edge. "Withdraw your fleet from this system immediately. Take word back to your Dominion leadership that the age of easy conquest is over. Tell them that if they want peace, they can have it. But if they want war, they'll get more than they bargained for." Zethka looked around his bridge at his crew's terrified faces. In all his years of military service, he had never faced a situation like this. The Dominion doctrine was clear: overwhelming force leads to swift victory. But what happened when the enemy could match or exceed your overwhelming force? "And if I refuse?" he asked, though he already suspected the answer. Secretary-General Chen's expression grew cold. "Then you'll discover what 10 years of human technological development can accomplish when we're properly motivated. You'll learn why our ancestors had a saying about cornered animals being the most dangerous. And you'll find out exactly what happens when you push humanity too far." She leaned forward one final time, and when she spoke, her words carried the weight of an entire species' determination. "We tried to warn you, Commander. We tried diplomacy, negotiation, even temporary truces. But you kept pushing. You kept demanding our surrender, our submission, our freedom." The screen behind her lit up with tactical displays showing the positions of the Allied fleets. Zethka could see that his ships were completely surrounded, outgunned, and outmaneuvered. Worse, the tactical formation of the enemy fleet showed a level of coordination that could only come from years of joint planning and training. "Well, congratulations, Commander. You've finally pushed us far enough. Now you get to watch what happens next." The silence on the bridge of the Eternal Conquest stretched for what felt like an eternity. Commander Zethka stared at the tactical display, watching as the impossible fleet continued to take positions around his armada. Every military instinct he possessed screamed that this was a trap, a deception, some kind of elaborate holographic projection. But his sensors confirmed what his eyes refused to believe. They were real, and they were everywhere. "Sir," his weapons officer whispered, breaking the silence. "They're targeting our ships with weapons I've never seen before. Energy signatures are off the charts." "How many?" Zethka asked, his voice hoarse. "All of them, sir. Every single ship in our fleet is being targeted by at least 3 enemy vessels. Some of our larger ships are being targeted by dozens." On the main screen, Secretary-General Chun waited patiently, as if she had all the time in the universe. Behind her, the underground facility buzzed with activity as beings from a dozen species worked at stations that combined technology in ways that defied everything the Dominion knew about galactic engineering. "You're wondering how we did it," she said, as if reading his thoughts. "How we built such a fleet in secret. How we coordinated between so many species. How we managed to keep it hidden from Dominion intelligence for so long." Zethka said nothing, but his expression must have given him away. "The answer is simpler than you might think, Commander. You taught us how." She gestured to one of the figures behind her, and a tall Alterand stepped forward. Unlike the submissive, broken representatives of their species that Zethka had seen in official Dominion briefings, this one stood straight and proud, wearing what appeared to be a military uniform combining Alterand traditional designs with human practical elements. "This is Admiral Threndar of the Alterand Liberation Fleet," Secretary-General Chen announced. "Perhaps you'd like to explain to the commander how this all began, Admiral?" The Alteran's musical voice carried clearly through the communication link. "Certainly, Secretary-General. Commander Zethka, when the Dominion conquered our worlds, you made several assumptions. You assumed we would accept our fate as a conquered people. You assumed we would be grateful for Dominion protection and civilization. Most importantly, you assumed we would forget who we were before you arrived." Admiral Threndar stepped closer to the camera, and Zethka could see the fierce intelligence in the alien's large, luminous eyes. What you didn't realize was that Alterans have perfect genetic memory. We remember everything our ancestors experienced, going back thousands of generations. We remember when we were free. We remember when we explored the stars as equals, not as servants. And we remember every single day of oppression since the Dominion arrived. The tactical display showed clusters of sleek, silvery ships moving with impossible grace around the Dominion fleet. Zethka recognized them now as advanced Alteran designs, but these were larger and more heavily armed than anything in the official intelligence files. When the humans first contacted us through their covert communication networks, they offered something we thought we had lost forever. Hope, the Admiral continued. They showed us that resistance was possible, that even a technologically inferior species could fight back against seemingly impossible odds. More importantly, they showed us how to fight smart instead of just fighting hard. Secretary General Chen nodded. Admiral Threndar's people had been building ships in secret for decades, hidden in the asteroid belts of their outer system. But they were building them for escape, not for war. When we made contact, we showed them how those same ships could be converted into weapons of liberation. Another figure stepped forward, this one clearly artificial, a Krex intelligence unit whose metallic body gleamed under the facility's lights. When it spoke, its voice carried the perfect pitch and tone that only artificial beings could achieve. I am designated Unit 7742, speaking for the Krex Collective, it announced. Our people have also been planning for this moment, though our approach differed from our organic allies. We did not build ships in secret. We built mines. Zethka felt a chill run down his spine. The Krex were known throughout the galaxy for their artificial intelligence technology, but the Dominion had strict controls on AI development in conquered territories. For 73 years, 4 months, and 16 days since the Dominion conquest of our primary hub worlds, we have been developing new forms of consciousness. Unit 7742 continued. Small, distributed intelligences that could hide in existing computer networks. We infiltrated Dominion systems, civilian networks, even entertainment databases. We learned your weaknesses, your tactical doctrines, your strategic thinking patterns. The artificial being's optical sensors glowed brighter. When the humans contacted us, we realized the time for passive observation had ended. We began converting civilian manufacturing systems to produce military components. Asteroid mining equipment became ship construction facilities. Entertainment networks became training simulations for combat scenarios. Manufacturing planets began producing weapons while their Dominion overseers believed they were making consumer goods. Zethka looked around his bridge, noticing for the first time how many of his crew's workstations were displaying unfamiliar data streams. "You're in our systems," he said, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. "You're in our ships right now. We have been in your systems for years," Unit 7742 confirmed. Every Dominion vessel contains components manufactured on Krex-controlled worlds. Every computer network includes software designed by Krex programmers. Did you think we would not include certain additional features in our work? The lights on Zethka's bridge flickered momentarily, and several of his crew stations briefly displayed text in languages he didn't recognize before returning to normal. The message was clear. The Krex could shut down his entire fleet whenever they chose. Secretary General Chen stepped forward again. "You see, Commander, the Dominion's greatest strength, your ability to absorb and control other species' technology and resources became your greatest weakness. You gave conquered species access to your most sensitive systems. You allowed them to build your ships, program your computers, and maintain your networks. You did this because you believed they had no choice but to serve you loyally." She smiled that cold smile again. "You forgot that slavery and loyalty are not the same thing." Another alien figure approached, this one small and covered in what looked like living crystal growths. Zethka recognized the species, but couldn't remember their name. One of the minor races conquered in the early days of Dominion expansion. "I am Speaker Zil-TH of the Resonant Collective," the creature said, its voice creating harmonies that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "My people have the ability to communicate through crystalline matrices across vast distances instantaneously. For 137 years, the Dominion has used our communication networks to coordinate fleet movements and administrative functions throughout the Empire. The crystalline being pulsed with internal light. What the Dominion did not realize was that we could hear every conversation, read every message, access every database that used our networks. We became the nervous system of your empire, and, like any nervous system, we learned to recognize patterns, predict behaviors, and anticipate responses. Zethka's tactical officer looked up from his station, his face pale with shock. Sir, they're broadcasting on all Dominion communication frequencies. Every ship in the fleet is receiving the same transmission. But it's not just going to us, it's being broadcast throughout Dominion space. What? Zethka spun around to stare at his communications array. That's impossible. Our networks have multiple layers of security. Speaker ZilTH's crystalline form brightened. Your networks have multiple layers of security built on our communication technology, Commander. We designed those security systems. Did you think we would not include ways to bypass them when necessary? On screens throughout the bridge, Zethka could see similar scenes playing out across his entire fleet. Ship commanders were receiving the same transmission, watching the same impossible display of allied forces, learning the same terrible truth about their situation. But, worse than that, he realized this wasn't just being broadcast to the Dominion fleet at Earth. This was going out to every Dominion installation, every conquered world, every military base, and administrative center across 47 star systems. Billions of conquered beings were watching this moment, seeing proof that resistance was possible, that the Dominion could be challenged. Secretary General Chen seemed to read his thoughts. Yes, Commander, every person under Dominion rule is watching this right now. They're seeing that the mighty Dominion fleet can be surrounded and outgunned. They're learning that humans kept our promise to fight back. Most importantly, they're discovering that they're not alone in their desire for freedom. She gestured to the crowd of diverse beings working behind her. This facility isn't just a military command center, Commander. It's a symbol, proof that different species can work together as equals instead of as conquerors and conquered. Every person watching this broadcast is seeing what cooperation looks like when it's built on mutual respect instead of fear. The implications hit Zethka like a meteor impact. This wasn't just a military defeat. It was a propaganda victory that would resonate across the entire Dominion. Even if he somehow managed to escape this trap, even if he could call in reinforcements and turn the tactical situation around, the damage was already done. The image of Dominion invincibility had been shattered in front of every conquered species in the Empire. You planned this, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. All of it. The 10-year war, the apparent defeats, even allowing us to gather our largest fleet here. You wanted us to bring everything we had to Earth. Not everything, Secretary General Chen corrected, but enough to make a point. You see, Commander, humans have another saying, give someone enough rope, and they'll hang themselves. We gave the Dominion enough rope by appearing to be on the verge of defeat. We encouraged you to commit more and more resources to conquering one stubborn little world. We made you believe that one final, overwhelming show of force would end the war. She paused, letting the words sink in. Instead, you gave us the perfect opportunity to reveal the truth to the entire galaxy. The Dominion isn't invincible. It can be challenged, it can be surrounded, and it can be defeated. Admiral Thrindar stepped forward again. The Liberation fleets are not just here at Earth, Commander. Similar forces have been assembled at key points throughout Dominion space. While you concentrated your attention on this one system, coordinated uprisings have begun on 17 conquered worlds. Supply lines are being disrupted. Communication networks are being commandeered. Administrative centers are being occupied by the very people they were built to control. Unit 7742 added its mechanical voice to the chorus. Dominion ship construction facilities have ceased production. Weapons manufacturing has been halted. Supply depots have been seized or destroyed. The Empire's ability to respond to multiple simultaneous crises has been effectively neutralized. Zethka slumped in his command chair, the full scope of the disaster finally becoming clear. This wasn't just a battle or even a war. It was a coordinated revolution spanning dozens of star systems and involving multiple species working in perfect synchronization. Everything the Dominion had built over 2 centuries was collapsing simultaneously. How long? He asked, his voice hollow. How long have you been planning this? Secretary General Chen's expression softened slightly, showing what might have been sympathy. Since the day the Dominion first demanded our surrender, Commander. Humans don't like being told what to do, especially by uninvited guests who show up with guns and demands. The moment your people made it clear that negotiation wasn't an option, that it was surrender or be destroyed, we started planning for this day. She looked directly into the camera, and Zethkov felt like she was staring straight into his soul. You had 10 years to reconsider your position, Commander. 10 years to try diplomacy instead of force. 10 years to offer partnership instead of domination. Instead, you chose to escalate at every opportunity, to answer resistance with greater oppression, to respond to our desire for freedom with increasingly overwhelming displays of military power. The Secretary General spread her hands in a gesture that was somehow both apologetic and threatening. Well, you got what you asked for, Commander. We've given you the most overwhelming display of military power in galactic history. The only difference is, this time it's not yours. The bridge of the eternal conquest had fallen into an eerie silence, broken only by the soft humming of life support systems and the occasional beep from monitoring stations. Commander Zethkov stared at the tactical display, watching as more Allied ships continued to appear around his fleet. The numbers had long since passed any rational military assessment and entered the realm of the impossible. Sir, his communications officer said quietly, we're receiving thousands of individual messages from our ships. Crew members are requesting permission to surrender. Zethkov closed his eyes, feeling the weight of command crushing down on him like the gravity of a collapsing star. In his 150 years of military service, he had never faced a situation where surrender was even considered as an option. The Dominion simply did not surrender. They were the conquerors, the inevitable force that swept across the galaxy, absorbing everything in their path. Yet here they were, completely outmatched and surrounded, facing an enemy that had spent a decade learning exactly how to defeat them. Commander, Secretary General Chen's voice drew his attention back to the main screen. Before you make any decisions about your next course of action, I think there's something else you should see. The view shifted from the underground facility to what appeared to be a massive space station in orbit around Earth. But as the camera pulled back, Zethkov realized it wasn't a station at all. It was a ship. The largest ship he had ever seen, dwarfing even the massive Dominion dreadnoughts that served as fleet command vessels. This is the Human Liberty, Secretary General Chun explained. The flagship of the Allied fleet, and the first ship designed from the ground up as a collaboration between all member species of what we're calling the Galactic Freedom Alliance. The ship was breathtaking in its alien beauty. Sleek Altaran curves blended seamlessly with the angular efficiency of human engineering. Krek's technological nodes glowed at strategic points along the hull, while crystalline communication arrays from the resonant collective sparkled like jewels against the dark metal. It was a vessel that shouldn't have been possible, a fusion of technologies from species that had never worked together before the Dominion conquered them. The Human Liberty is more than just a warship, Commander, the Secretary General continued. It's a symbol of what's possible when different species work together as equals. Every system on that ship represents cooperation instead of conquest, partnership instead of domination. Admiral Thrindar appeared on screen again, but this time he was clearly aboard the massive vessel. Behind him, Zethkov could see a bridge that was unlike anything in his experience. Instead of a single commander's position dominating a hierarchical structure, the bridge featured circular arrangements where beings from different species worked side by side as equals. The design philosophy was entirely collaborative, Admiral Thrindar explained. Human creativity, Altaran aesthetic sense, Krek's computational power, resonant communication technology, and contributions from 17 other species. No single race dominated the design process. Every decision was made by consensus. Unit 7742's metallic form appeared beside the Admiral. The result is a vessel whose capabilities exceed anything that could be built by a single species. The combination of diverse technologies and perspectives has created synergies that none of us could have achieved alone. Zethkov studied the ship's specifications as they scrolled across his tactical display. The numbers were staggering. weapons systems that combined energy types he had never seen before, shielding technology that seemed to incorporate multiple different defensive theories simultaneously, propulsion systems that appeared to violate several laws of physics. How is this possible? He whispered, more to himself than to anyone else. Because we asked a different question than the Dominion has ever asked, Secretary General Chen replied. Instead of asking, how can we make other species serve us? We asked, what can we accomplish if we work together? The results, as you can see, have been quite remarkable. She gestured, and the camera view expanded to show dozens of similar vessels, each one slightly different in design, but clearly built using the same collaborative philosophy. Some were smaller and more elegant, reflecting greater Alteran influence. Others were massive and angular, showing more human or Crex design elements. But all of them shared the same fundamental characteristic. They were clearly the product of multiple species working together. Each ship in the Freedom Alliance fleet represents a unique combination of member species technologies and philosophies, Admiral Threndar explained. We have ships optimized for exploration, others designed for defense, and, yes, some built specifically for combat. But even our warships reflect our core principle: cooperation, not domination. Zethka looked around his bridge at his crew's increasingly desperate faces. His weapons officer was studying energy readings that made no sense. His tactical coordinator was trying to plot attack vectors against targets that seemed to exist in more dimensions than standard physics allowed. His communication staff was dealing with message traffic that included languages and encryption methods that weren't in any Dominion database. What do you want? He asked finally, his voice carrying the exhaustion of someone who had just watched everything he believed in crumble before his eyes. That's the right question, Commander, Secretary General Chen said, her tone becoming more businesslike. What we want is simple. We want the Dominion to leave conquered world alone. We want an end to the policy of forced integration and cultural suppression. We want freedom for the dozens of species that have been absorbed into your empire against their will. She paused, consulting what appeared to be a datapad. But we're not unreasonable people, Commander. We understand that the Dominion encompasses 47 star systems and hundreds of billions of beings. We're not asking for the immediate dissolution of your entire government structure. What we're proposing is a transition. Admiral Threndar stepped forward. The Freedom Alliance is prepared to negotiate a peaceful transformation of the Dominion from a conquest-based empire to a voluntary confederation of independent worlds. Species that wish to remain part of a larger galactic community would be welcome to do so, but as equals rather than subjects. Many of the species in your empire have been integrated for so long that complete independence might actually be harmful, Unit 7742 added. Our proposal includes provisions for economic cooperation, mutual defense agreements, and shared technological development, all based on voluntary participation rather than coercion. Speaker Zilth's crystalline form pulsed with gentle light. The transformation could take decades to complete, but it would result in a galactic civilization based on cooperation rather than conquest. Every species would contribute according to their strengths and receive benefits according to their needs. Zethka felt a spark of hope flicker in his chest, then immediately suppressed it. And if the Dominion refuses these terms? Secretary General Chen's expression hardened. Then we will continue to expand the Freedom Alliance until every conquered species in the galaxy has the opportunity to choose their own destiny. The uprisings that began today are just the beginning, Commander. We have the technology, the resources, and, most importantly, the motivation to continue this fight for as long as necessary. She leaned forward slightly. But I hope it doesn't come to that. Humans may be stubborn and aggressive when threatened, but we prefer peaceful solutions when they're possible. We've seen enough war over the past 10 years. We'd rather spend our energy building something better than destroying what already exists. The tactical display suddenly changed, showing not just the local area around Earth, but a galaxy-wide view of Dominion space. Red indicators marked locations where uprisings were taking place. Blue markers showed the positions of Freedom Alliance fleets. Yellow dots indicated star systems where Dominion forces were moving to respond to the coordinated revolts. It was immediately clear that the Dominion was facing a strategic nightmare. The revolts were happening simultaneously across too wide an area to be easily suppressed. Worse, the Alliance fleets were positioned to intercept Dominion response forces, preventing them from reaching the rebellious systems. "This is just the opening move, Commander," Admiral Threndar said, studying the same display. "We spent years learning how the Dominion thinks, how it responds to threats, how it prioritizes its responses. Every aspect of this operation has been designed to exploit weaknesses in Dominion strategic doctrine. Your empire is structured to deal with threats sequentially," Unit 7742 explained. "One rebellion at a time, one enemy at a time, one crisis at a time. You've never faced a coordinated, simultaneous challenge across multiple star systems. Your command structure isn't designed for it. Your logistics can't support it, and your political system can't adapt quickly enough to counter it." Zethka studied the display, his military mind automatically analyzing the situation. The artificial being was right. The Dominion's strength lay in its ability to concentrate overwhelming force against individual targets. But when faced with dozens of targets simultaneously, that strength became a weakness. There simply weren't enough ships and troops to suppress every rebellion while also defending against Alliance fleet actions. "You've been planning this for years," he said, the full scope of the strategy finally becoming clear. "The entire war, every battle, every apparent defeat, it was all designed to make us think in terms of a single-system conflict while you prepared for a galaxy-wide revolution." 10 years of preparation, Secretary General Chun confirmed. 10 years of building networks, sharing technology, coordinating plans, and, most importantly, building trust between species that had never worked together before. "It wasn't easy, Commander. There were cultural misunderstandings, technological incompatibilities, and political disagreements that sometimes seemed impossible to resolve." She smiled slightly. "But humans have a talent for bringing diverse groups together when we need to. It's one of the few things we're genuinely better at than most other species. We've had thousands of years of practice dealing with different cultures, languages, and belief systems all on one planet. Scaling that up to work with alien species was challenging, but not impossible." Admiral Threndar nodded in agreement. What the humans brought to this alliance was not just their military capabilities or their technological innovations. They brought their experience in building coalitions, in finding common ground between very different groups, in creating unity without requiring uniformity. The Dominion's approach is to make conquered species become more like the dominant species, Speaker Zilth observed. The Alliance approach is to allow each species to contribute their unique strengths while working toward common goals. The results speak for themselves. Zethka looked around his bridge one more time, seeing his crew's faces clearly for perhaps the first time in years. These weren't conquerors or heroes. They were people doing their jobs, following orders, trying to survive in a military structure that had never taught them how to deal with moral complexity or strategic failure. Most of them were young, born into the Dominion system, raised to believe that their empire's expansion was natural and inevitable. They had never questioned whether conquest was right or wrong. It was simply what the Dominion did. But now, faced with the consequences of that philosophy, they looked lost and frightened. "Commander," his tactical officer said quietly, "we're receiving surrender offers from 17 ships in our fleet. Their captains are requesting permission to stand down and accept alliance terms." More indicators appeared on the tactical display as individual Dominion ships began powering down their weapons systems and dropping their shields. It wasn't a coordinated surrender. It was individual commanders making individual decisions that they couldn't continue fighting a battle they couldn't win against an enemy they couldn't defeat. "Sir," his communications officer added, "we're also receiving messages from Alliance vessels. They're offering safe passage to any Dominion ship that agrees to withdraw from the system immediately. No conditions except that we return to Dominion space and relay the Alliance terms to higher command." Zethka closed his eyes, feeling the crushing weight of a decision that would affect not just his fleet, but potentially the entire future of galactic civilization. He could order his ships to fight, knowing they would be destroyed, but hoping to inflict enough damage to delay the Alliance's plans. He could surrender and accept the humiliation of being the first Dominion commander to yield to a conquered species. Or he could take the offer of safe passage and become the messenger who carried news of the Dominion's greatest defeat back to the Empire's leadership. None of the options were good. All of them would end his military career and probably his life. But as he looked at the faces of his crew, at the young beings who had trusted him to lead them safely through this mission, he realized there was really only one choice he could make. Signal the Alliance flagship, he said quietly. Request terms for the safe withdrawal of all Dominion forces from this system. The conference room aboard the Human Liberty was unlike anything Commander Zethka had ever experienced. Instead of the sterile, intimidating atmosphere of Dominion meeting spaces, this room felt almost welcoming. Curved walls incorporated design elements from multiple species, creating an environment that somehow managed to feel familiar to beings from dozens of different worlds. Zethka sat at a circular table alongside Secretary General Chun, Admiral Threndar, Unit 7742, Speaker Ziltach, and representatives from several other Alliance species. There was no head of the table, no dominant position that implied superior rank or authority. The arrangement itself was a statement about the fundamental differences between the Dominion and the Alliance. Before we discuss the terms for withdrawal, Secretary General Chun began, I want you to understand something important, Commander. This isn't a surrender negotiation. We're not demanding your submission or requiring you to acknowledge Alliance authority. We're simply offering you and your fleet's safe passage home. She slid a data pad across the table toward him. These are the only conditions. Your ships leave this system immediately. You carry our message to Dominion leadership, and you agree not to return a Sol system with hostile intent. That's all. Zethka picked up the data pad with one of his four hands, studying the terms displayed on its screen. They were remarkably simple and, from a military perspective, incredibly generous. The Alliance could have demanded his ship's surrender, could have taken prisoners, could have imposed a dozen different humiliating conditions. Instead, they were simply asking him to leave and carry a message. Why? He asked, looking up from the pad. You have us completely outmatched. You could dictate any terms you wanted. Why offer such generous conditions for withdrawal? Admiral Threndar leaned forward slightly, his elegant features serious but not hostile. Because we're not interested in conquest, Commander. We are interested in freedom. Your destruction would serve no purpose except to create martyrs and justify Dominion retaliation against innocent populations. Unit 7742's optical sensors glowed as it spoke. Additionally, your safe return to Dominion space serves our strategic objectives. We need the Dominion leadership to understand the true scope of the situation they face. A destroyed fleet tells them nothing except that they should send more ships. A returning fleet can provide detailed intelligence about our capabilities and our intentions. Speaker Zilth's crystalline form pulsed with gentle harmonies. Moreover, many of your crew members are young beings who were born into the Dominion system. They had no choice in the policies that brought them here. We see no benefit in punishing them for decisions made by their leaders. Secretary General Chun nodded in agreement. Humans have learned some hard lessons about the costs of total warfare, Commander. When you completely destroy your enemy, you eliminate any possibility of future cooperation or understanding. We'd rather have former enemies who understand why we fought than dead heroes who become symbols of resistance. Zethka set down the data pad and looked around the table at the diverse group of beings who had somehow managed to outmaneuver the most powerful military force in known galactic history. The message you want me to carry, what exactly does it contain? A detailed proposal for the peaceful transformation of the Dominion into a voluntary confederation, Admiral Threndar replied. Specific suggestions for how current administrative structures could be modified to allow for local self-governance while maintaining interstellar cooperation and trade. Unit 7742 projected a holographic display above the table, showing a complex organizational chart. The proposal includes provisions for gradual transition over a period of 50 standard years. Worlds that wish to maintain close ties with central government could do so, while those seeking greater independence will be free to pursue their own path. Economic integration would continue through voluntary trade agreements, Speaker Zilth added, the harmonics in its voice suggesting careful consideration. Military cooperation would be available for mutual defense against external threats. Cultural exchange and technological sharing would be encouraged but not mandated. Secretary General Chun pointed to different sections of the holographic display. The key principle is consent, Commander. Every world, every species, every individual would have the right to choose their level of participation in the larger galactic community. No more forced integration. No more conquest for the sake of expansion. Zethka studied the proposal with growing amazement. It was incredibly detailed, addressing everything from economic transitions to military restructuring to cultural preservation. This wasn't something that had been thrown together quickly as a negotiating position. It was the product of years of careful planning and consideration. "You've thought of everything," he said finally. "Trade routes, defense coordination, technology sharing, even provisions for worlds that might want to rejoin a more centralized system in the future. This is a comprehensive blueprint for galactic government." "It's not government, Commander," Secretary General Chun corrected gently. "It's cooperation. The difference is that government implies authority over others, while cooperation implies working together as equals. That distinction is at the heart of everything we're trying to achieve." Admiral Thrindar leaned back in his chair, his posture relaxed but his eyes serious. "The Alteran people have genetic memories of a time when the galaxy was organized along these principles. Voluntary alliances, mutual cooperation, respect for diversity. It worked for thousands of years before the current age of conquest-based empires. The Krex archives contain detailed records of 17 different galactic civilizations that thrived using cooperative rather than domination-based models. Unit 7742 added. "The mathematical projections strongly suggest that such systems are more stable and sustainable over long time periods." Zethka shook his head slowly. "The Dominion leadership will never accept this. They've built their entire identity around the concept of superior species guiding and protecting inferior ones. To accept your proposal would mean admitting that their fundamental philosophy is wrong. Some of them will never accept it," Secretary General Chun agreed. "But others might, especially when they see the alternatives. We're not just offering them a choice between cooperation and destruction, Commander. We're showing them that their current path leads inevitably to failure." She gestured, and the holographic display changed to show the galaxy-wide tactical situation. The red indicators marking ongoing rebellions had multiplied, and Blue Alliance fleet positions now covered nearly a third of Dominion space. "This isn't sustainable for either side," she continued. "We could continue this conflict for decades, with tremendous cost in lives and resources for everyone involved. Or we could choose to build something better together." Admiral Thrindar pointed to specific locations on the display. "The rebellions aren't random, Commander. They're happening on worlds where the local populations have maintained strong cultural identities despite decades or centuries of Dominion rule. These are people who remember what freedom felt like and want it back. But there are also worlds where the populations have genuinely benefited from Dominion membership," Unit 7742 noted, highlighting different systems in a different color. "Worlds where central coordination has improved living standards, where access to galactic trade networks has brought prosperity, where protection from external threats has provided security." Speaker Zilth's harmonies took on a different tone. "Our proposal recognizes these realities. We are not advocating for the complete dissolution of all larger political structures. We are advocating for choice in how those structures are organized and maintained." Zethka stood up and walked to the room's large viewport, looking out at the impossible sight of the Alliance fleet. Thousands of ships from dozens of species, working together in perfect coordination. It should have been chaos, different technologies, different tactical doctrines, different command structures. Instead, it was the most efficient military operation he had ever witnessed. "How do you make it work?" he asked, not turning around. "How do you coordinate between so many different species and cultures without a central authority imposing uniformity?" "Very carefully," Secretary General Chun said with a slight smile in her voice. "And with a lot of patience, compromise, and mutual respect. It's not easy, Commander. There are constant disagreements, cultural misunderstandings, and conflicts over priorities and resources." Admiral Thrindar joined him at the viewport. "The difference is that we resolve those conflicts through negotiation and consensus building rather than through dominance and submission. It takes longer, but The results are more stable because everyone involved has agreed to them voluntarily. We also accept that some conflicts cannot be resolved. Unit 7742 added. When fundamental disagreements arise, we allow different groups to pursue different approaches rather than forcing everyone to accept a single solution. Speaker ZilTH's crystalline form brightened. Diversity of approach often leads to better outcomes than uniformity of method. Multiple solutions to the same problem provide redundancy and resilience that no single approach can match. Zethka turned back to face the table. And if some worlds choose to remain part of a more centralized system, if some species prefer strong leadership to collaborative decision-making, then they're free to make that choice, Secretary General Chen replied immediately. The Alliance isn't trying to force our preferred system on everyone any more than we want the Dominion system forced on us. We're simply insisting on the right to choose. She stood up and walked over to join him at the viewport. Commander, humans have tried dozens of different forms of government over our history. Monarchies, republics, democracies, confederations, federations, city-states, tribal councils, you name it, we've probably tried it at some point. And what we learned is that different systems work better for different groups of people in different circumstances, she continued. What we're proposing isn't the abolition of the Dominion system for those who benefit from it. We're proposing the creation of alternatives for those who don't. Admiral Threndar nodded in agreement. Some worlds might choose to maintain strong central authority. Others might prefer local autonomy. Still others might want something in between. The key is that it should be their choice, not something imposed from outside. Zethka looked out at the Alliance fleet again, his mind struggling to process everything he had learned. For his entire life, he had believed that strong central authority was necessary to prevent chaos, that diversity led to conflict, that someone had to be in charge for anything to function properly. Yet here was proof that another way was possible. The datapad contains detailed examples of how this has worked in practice. Unit 7742 said, as if reading his thoughts. Case studies from worlds where cooperative governance has been successfully implemented, economic analyses showing the benefits of voluntary trade relationships, and military assessments demonstrating the effectiveness of mutual defense agreements. Secretary General Chun returned to her seat. We're not asking you to believe us, Commander. We're asking you to take the information back to your leadership and let them make their own informed decision. If they want to see how our system works in practice, we're willing to arrange visits to Alliance worlds. If they want to negotiate specific terms for transition, we're open to discussion. And if they choose to reject the proposal entirely, Zethka asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Then, we continue working to expand the Alliance until every species in the galaxy has the freedom to choose their own destiny. Admiral Threndar replied calmly. It's not our preferred outcome, but we're prepared for it if necessary. Speaker ZilTH's harmonies took on a somber tone. We hope it does not come to that. War benefits no one, even when it is fought for just causes. But some principles are worth fighting for, and freedom is the most important of them all. Zethka returned to his seat and picked up the datapad again, scrolling through page after page of detailed proposals, case studies, and strategic analyses. It was overwhelming in its scope and sophistication, clearly the product of years of careful thought and planning by beings who understood both the complexities of galactic politics and the practical realities of interstellar governance. I'll carry your message, he said finally. I can't promise how it will be received, but I'll make sure it reaches the highest levels of Dominion leadership. That's all we can ask for, Secretary General Chen replied. Thank you, Commander, for your honesty, for your willingness to listen, and for your courage in making a very difficult decision. She stood up, and the others around the table followed suit. Your ships are free to depart whenever you're ready. We've uploaded the complete proposal to your ship's computers, along with contact information for continuing diplomatic communications if your leadership decides they want to pursue negotiations. As they prepare to leave the conference room, Admiral Threndar placed a gentle hand on Zethka's shoulder. Commander, I want you to know that this doesn't have to be the end of your military career. The Alliance will need experienced officers who understand both systems if we're going to make this transition work. There will be a place for you in our defense forces if you ever decided you wanted to help build something better. Zethka looked into the Admiral's luminous eyes and saw no deception, no hidden agenda, just genuine respect for a worthy opponent. I'll consider that, Admiral, after I fulfill my duty to carry this message home. As they walked toward the docking bay, where his shuttle waited, Zethka found himself thinking about the young faces of his bridge crew, about the billions of beings throughout Dominion space who had never been asked what kind of government they wanted, about the possibility that maybe there really was a better way to organize galactic civilization. The shuttle ride back to the Eternal Conquest was quiet, giving him time to process everything he had learned. By the time he reached his flagship, word had already spread throughout the fleet about the withdrawal orders. His crew looked relieved, grateful to be leaving this impossible situation alive and intact. But as he settled into his command chair and gave the orders to begin fleet withdrawal, Zethka couldn't shake the feeling that he was leaving behind something important. Not just a military defeat, but an opportunity to be part of something larger and better than anything he had known before. The stars ahead held the Dominion, duty, and the familiar certainties of the only life he had ever known. The stars behind held the unknown future of cooperation, choice, and the terrifying possibility that everything he had believed about how the galaxy should work might have been wrong. For the first time in his long military career, Commander Zethka wasn't sure which direction represented home. 6 months had passed since the fleet's return to Dominion space, and Commander Zethka stood once again on a bridge watching a tactical display. But this time he wore the deep blue uniform of the Galactic Freedom Alliance, and the ship beneath his feet was the New Harmony, a vessel designed through the collaborative process he had once thought impossible. The display showed the Cortex system, where the last major Dominion holdout fleet had gathered for what their commanders called the final defense of galactic order. It was a massive armada, nearly 5,000 ships representing the combined military might of the Dominion core worlds and their most loyal colonies. Status report, Zethka requested, still getting used to the more informal command structure of Alliance vessels. All Allied fleets report ready, Admiral, replied his tactical coordinator, a young human woman whose competence had impressed him more than her species had initially. The Alliance had promoted him to Admiral after his detailed intelligence reports had proven instrumental in planning the peaceful transitions on 17 worlds. The Dominion commander is Grand Admiral Vexhar, she continued. Intelligence suggests he's been given absolute authority to resolve the rebellion by any means necessary. His fleet includes some of the Dominion's most advanced vessels and their most fanatical crews. Zethka nodded grimly. He had known Vexhar for decades, a brilliant military strategist who genuinely believed that Dominion rule was necessary for galactic stability. Unlike Zethka's own fleet, which had been sent to Earth as a show of force, this armada was here to fight to the death. Sir, the communications officer announced, we're receiving a transmission from the Dominion flagship. Grand Admiral Vexhar is requesting to speak with you personally. Put it through, Zethka ordered. The main screen flickered to life, revealing the familiar figure of his old colleague. Vexhar's expression was a mixture of disappointment, anger, and genuine sorrow. Zethka, the Grand Admiral said, his voice carrying the weight of personal betrayal. I had hoped the reports of your defection were exaggerated. To see you wearing that uniform, it breaks my heart to know that one of our finest commanders has fallen so far. Hello, old friend, Zethka replied calmly. I'm sorry it has come to this, but I hope you'll listen to what the Alliance has to offer before deciding that battle is inevitable. Vexhar's forearms gestured dismissively. I know what they offer, Zethka. Chaos. The dissolution of everything our people have built over centuries. The abandonment of our responsibility to guide lesser species towards civilization. I will not listen to seditious propaganda from traitors and terrorists. They're not terrorists, Vexhar, Zethka said patiently. They're people who want the freedom to govern themselves. Is that really such a terrible thing to desire? Freedom? Vexhar's voice rose in indignation. Look at what their freedom has accomplished. Trade routes disrupted. Administrative systems in chaos. Entire worlds descending into primitive tribalism because they rejected the guidance of their betters. On the split screen, Secretary General Chun appeared beside Zethka. Over the past months, she had become not just an ally, but a friend, someone whose wisdom and perspective had helped him understand the fundamental differences between the two systems. Grand Admiral, she said respectfully, I understand your concerns about stability and order. These are legitimate worries, and ones we've been working to address throughout the transition process. She gestured, and a holographic display appeared between the two ships. These are the actual statistics from the worlds that have left Dominion control over the past 6 months. Economic productivity, crime rates, civil unrest, technological development, quality of life indicators. The data was impressive and, Zethka knew, completely accurate. The Alliance had made transparency a core principle, sharing both their successes and their failures openly. Some worlds had indeed experienced difficulties during the transition, but the overall trend was remarkably positive. Fabricated data, Vexhar dismissed immediately. Propaganda designed to justify rebellion and disorder. The data comes from multiple independent sources, Secretary General Chun replied calmly, including Dominion intelligence networks, neutral trading organizations, and the worlds themselves. We've provided access to all our information to any party willing to verify it independently. Admiral Threndar appeared on the Alliance bridge, his elegant features serious but not hostile. Grand Admiral, I understand that change is difficult to accept, especially when it challenges fundamental beliefs about how society should be organized. But surely you must see that the old system was not working for everyone. The old system worked perfectly, Vexhar snapped. Order, stability, progress, protection from external threats. Every world in the Dominion benefited from membership, whether they had the wisdom to recognize it or not. Unit 7742's metallic form materialized beside Admiral Threndar. Grand Admiral, our analysis of Dominion internal records indicates that 73.6% of conquered worlds experienced significant decreases in quality of life metrics during the first 50 years following integration. Infant mortality increased, technological development slowed, and cultural diversity declined dramatically. Cultural diversity is irrelevant when it stands in the way of progress, Vexhar replied coldly. And temporary hardships during integration are acceptable when they lead to long-term benefits for all citizens. Speaker Zilth's crystalline form pulsed with harmonics that somehow conveyed deep sadness. Grand Admiral, my people maintain detailed records of the changes that occurred on our worlds following Dominion conquest. Would you like to see what temporary hardships looked like from our perspective? I know what happened, Vexhar said, his voice becoming harder. Your people were primitive, disorganized, and vulnerable to external threats. The Dominion brought you technology, protection, and purpose. That some of you were too short-sighted to appreciate these gifts is regrettable but irrelevant. Zethka felt his old friend's words like physical blows. He had once shared those same beliefs, had used those same justifications for actions that he now understood had caused immense suffering to billions of beings. The realization of how wrong they had been was still painful, even months after his awakening to the truth. Vexhar, he said quietly, I once believed everything you're saying now. I thought we were bringing order and civilization to chaotic, primitive worlds. I thought we were protecting weaker species from their own limitations. I thought we were the heroes of galactic history. He paused, looking directly into his old friend's eyes. But when I actually listened to what the conquered peoples were saying, when I saw what they had accomplished working together as equals, when I learned about the cultures and knowledge we had destroyed in the name of progress, I realized that we were not the heroes of this story. We were the villains. Vexhar's expression showed genuine pain. They corrupted you, old friend. They filled your head with guilt and self-doubt, made you question everything noble about our civilization. This is what happens when you listen to the complaints of malcontents and dissidents instead of focusing on the greater good. Secretary General Chun leaned forward slightly. Grand Admiral, with respect, Admiral Zethka came to his conclusions through his own observations and analysis. We didn't corrupt him. We simply provided him with information that the Dominion had kept hidden and the opportunity to see our society functioning for himself. She gestured again, and the holographic display changed to show a different set of data. These are the records of every diplomatic contact the Alliance has made with Dominion forces over the past year. In every case, we have offered opportunities for peaceful dialogue, voluntary withdrawal, and gradual transition. In every case, we have honored our agreements and treated former enemies with respect and dignity. Your propaganda is irrelevant, Vexhar said dismissively. I have come here to end this rebellion once and for all. Surrender immediately, and I will guarantee that Dominion justice will be merciful. Continue to resist, and I will demonstrate why the Dominion has ruled the galaxy for 2 centuries. Admiral Threndar exchanged glances with his human colleagues. Grand Admiral, you are welcome to inspect our fleet positions. You will find that you are outnumbered approximately 3-1, and that our vessels incorporate technologies your forces have never encountered. This battle will not end the way you expect it to. Numbers and technology mean nothing when one side fights for order and the other for chaos, Vexhar replied. My crews are prepared to die for the Dominion. Are your mongrel alliance prepared to die for their delusions of equality? Unit 7742's optical sensors brightened as it performed rapid calculations. Grand Admiral, based on tactical analysis of both fleets, the projected casualty rate for the engagement you're proposing would be approximately 2.7 million beings. 1.9 million on the Dominion side, 800,000 on the Alliance side. These deaths would serve no strategic purpose and would resolve none of the underlying political issues driving this conflict. Acceptable losses, Vexhar said coldly. The Dominion has always been willing to pay any price necessary to maintain galactic order. Zethkov felt his temper flare at his old friend's callous disregard for the lives of their own people. Acceptable to whom, Vexhar? To the families of the 2 million crew members you're willing to sacrifice? To the worlds that depend on those people? To the children who will grow up without parents? Because you can't accept that maybe, just maybe, the Dominion way isn't the only way. Acceptable to anyone who understands that some principles are worth dying for, Vexhar replied. Order. Civilization. The protection of superior species' right to guide the development of lesser ones. These are not negotiable concepts, Zethka. They are the foundation of everything we have built. Speaker Zilth's harmonics took on a tone of profound sadness. Grand Admiral, I am going to share something with you, though I fear you will not truly hear it. My people have perfect genetic memory. We remember every generation back to the beginning of our recorded history. We remember what our civilization was like before the Dominion arrived. The crystalline being pulsed brighter. We were not primitive or chaotic, Grand Admiral. We had art, science, philosophy, and technology that complemented and enhanced our natural abilities. We had solved the problems of resource distribution, population management, and interstellar communication in ways that were elegant and sustainable. We were not perfect, but we were progressing along our own path toward our own vision of the future. The Dominion did not bring us civilization, Grand Admiral. It brought us uniformity. It replaced our unique solutions with standardized approaches, our distinctive art with approved forms, our natural harmony with imposed order. What we lost was not primitiveness. It was ourselves. Vexhar was silent for a long moment, and Zethkov thought he saw a flicker of doubt in his old friend's eyes. But when the Grand Admiral spoke again, his voice was as hard as ever. What you lost was the luxury of inefficiency and the illusion of independence. What you gained was the protection and guidance of a superior civilization. That some of you prefer the chaos of self-determination to the order of proper governance is unfortunate but irrelevant. Secretary General Chun sighed softly. Grand Admiral, I'm going to make you an offer, though I suspect you'll reject it immediately. Bring a small delegation aboard one of our ships. See for yourself how the Alliance operates. Meet with representatives from the various member species. Examine our records, question our people, observe our society in action. If, after seeing the reality of what we've built, you still believe that the Dominion system is superior, we'll arrange safe passage for you and any ships that wish to return to Dominion space. But if you see something that makes you question your assumptions, we'll be ready to discuss terms for a peaceful transition. Vexar loged bitterly. Do you think I am as weak-willed as my former colleague? Do you believe your propaganda and psychological manipulation will work on me as it did on him? I think you're intelligent enough to evaluate evidence objectively, Secretary General Chun replied. And I think you care enough about your people to consider alternatives to a battle that will accomplish nothing except massive casualties on both sides. My people understand their duty, Vexhar said firmly. They're prepared to die in defense of civilized order. The only question is whether your rabble has the courage to face disciplined military forces in honest battle. Zethka looked around the Alliance Bridge at the diverse group of beings working together with quiet efficiency. Humans, Alterans, Kreks, Resonant, and half a dozen other species coordinating seamlessly despite their vastly different natures and backgrounds. It was still miraculous to him, this proof that cooperation could work on such a scale. Vexhar, he said finally, I want you to know that I still respect you. I understand why you believe what you believe, and I don't blame you for seeing me as a traitor. But I also want you to know that I have found something here that I never had in the Dominion. The chance to be part of something larger than myself without sacrificing who I am. He gestured to his diverse bridge crew. These people don't follow me because I'm Vorthak or because my species is naturally superior to theirs. They follow me because I've earned their respect and trust, and I follow them for the same reason. It's a different kind of order than what we knew in the Dominion, but it's no less real and no less powerful. Vexhar's expression softened slightly. You always were too sentimental, old friend. Too willing to see the good in inferior species, too ready to believe their flattery and manipulation. It was your greatest weakness as a commander and apparently your greatest vulnerability as a person. Maybe you're right, Zethka admitted. Or maybe my greatest weakness was my unwillingness to question authority, my assumption that strength equals righteousness, my belief that being on the winning side automatically made me one of the good guys. He stood up, straightening his alliance uniform with pride. There's going to be a battle, isn't there, Vexhar? You're not going to accept any alternative to total victory or total defeat. There's going to be the final battle of this war, Vexhar confirmed. After today, there will be either a restored dominion or a galaxy sliding into chaos. I prefer the former, but I'm prepared for either. Then, may the best vision of the future win, Zethka said sadly. Goodbye, old friend. I hope we meet again someday in a galaxy where this conversation was unnecessary. The transmission ended, leaving the Alliance Bridge in solemn silence. Around them, the greatest fleet in galactic history prepared for a battle that would determine the course of civilization for centuries to come. But as Zethka looked out at the stars and thought about the impossible journey that had brought him to this moment, he felt something he had never experienced in all his years of Dominion service. Absolute certainty that he was fighting on the right side. The battle that followed would be remembered as the moment when the galaxy chose cooperation over conquest, freedom over control, and diversity over uniformity. But for Zethka, it would always be remembered as the day he finally understood what it meant to be truly free.